Good evening, everyone. Thank you for accepting to be with us. We are on our third webinar for this day. I am Avu. I'm the Deputy Chief of Party of Ranwash Project, and I'm happy to share with you the resources related to the mainstreaming of gender in the wash sector. The aim of this series of webinar is to transfer the developed resources and used by the Ranwash project and transfer for the wash sector, and this is part of our transition strategy. And during the former presentation, there is a service of translation in English by clicking on the button, interpretation button, and at the end of this presentation, we'll have a Q&A session where you can post your questions related on the presentation on the chat. To start with, maybe a brief description of the Ranwash project. It's a 6-year project from June 2017 and July 2017, composed of a consortium including KSCLS Watered and two private operators, Bushproof and Santajan. And this is the mission is to give access to equitable and sustainable water, sanitation, and hygiene. And gender and social inclusion is a cross-cutting component of this project, and the same as the engagement of the private sector. As you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, we have a map showing the 7 regions of interventions of the project. These slides is showing the 3 points I'm going to share today. First of all, we're going to try to understand why mainstreaming the gender strategy, and secondly, see how Ranwash implemented those strategies and what are the tools we use, why Ranwash adopted this strategy on gender mainstreaming right from the beginning of the project. We conducted a gender analysis on the regions of interventions, and from the results of those analyses, we devised an approach, gender approach, and some contexts from the outcome of those studies. We could see that women and girls are responsible for the households. The model women are most of the time put aside when we speak of decision making, and men are the ones who make decisions, and the women and the children are most of the time put aside, like the access to healthcare facilities and the schools, and people scarcely denounce violence, gender-based violence. The gender analysis provided those recommendations, like working with the men, authorities, and different structures to promote the competence and the leadership of women, and including them in the decision making, more mainstreaming youth and women, the development of wash services. And for that, we have to understand the importance of the women in the integration of the different types of activities organized in the society. We have to consider inclusively the women's, the youth, the boys, the people with disabilities ideas, and in the development of wash products to ensure inclusivity, and to adapt those products to the population, the different categories of population. For sustainable impact, Run Wash in all interventions are contributing in the wash system, and this is, and here we transferred the transformation of those building blocks, because the gender and social inclusion is a cross-cutting element. For example, the project is promoting models of services adapted to the different categories of people, and the project is reinforcing the structures and the instance of decision making to reinforce the capacity of the youth, the women. We also build the capacity of the women and the girls, the youth, to provide wash services and set links with the banks or VSLA or loan groups. And lately we use transformative approaches in the communities and the different stakeholders for the transformation of social norms and to mainstream different categories of the communities. This slide shows the gender strategies of Run Wash, which is based on a uniform frame of care international on the autonomization of women. And for that we have three main components: the development of an entity, relation, power dynamics, and restructuration of the entities. Run Wash provided trainings for women and youth, and also for different other categories of the society, so that they can be mainstreams in the decision making and the power relation through the development of linkages with the young entrepreneurs, seamstresses, and the groups of structures to monitor the control and access to those services. And as transformation of the structures and social norms, we conducted some reflections and dialogues to autonomize women, and some tools were elaborated to identify some challenges and to transform the social norms which are preventing the different categories of the population to have access to those services. The approaches are based on the rights and the responsibilities on wash. Each individual has the right to live and contribute and to set an environment for the access to services on wash. The women, the youth, people with disability, and others. So to implement those strategies, Run Wash used different transformative approaches mentioned in these slides. To share those tools and the resources during the 6 years of implementation. So before sharing the resources, I would like to share with you the significant achievements of the project. On the left, 51% of operational operators, service providers composed of women, and 35% of youth of under 35, and they improved their income. 35% of women out of the 7,782 members. As you could see during the presentation, we mentioned the Grow Up Seeker approach, which is promoting the 5 key behaviors and the collaboration between the members of the household is constituting one behavior. 20,456 households adopted those 5 behaviors, and some women participated, became member of different committees. From this slide, sorry for that interjection. From this slide, we're going to see the different resources that were used by Ramesh during those 6 years of intervention. So they were classified into 10 themes that can be downloaded from the website, and there are also QR codes that can be used for the downloading. Let's start with the gender analysis as shared during from the beginning of this presentation. We developed the strategies of intervention during the COVID-19 pandemic. We did some gender analysis to assess the impact of the pandemic on the way of working of the different categories of the communities. You can see here the report on the gender analysis after the passage of the COVID-19 pandemic, to see the impact and to grasp the recommendations to consider the different categories of persons in the implementation of the different interventions. The second point is on the strategy of interventions on gender and social inclusion. Here you can see through this link the strategies of gender mainstreaming by mentioning all the challenges in terms of gender on the communes of interventions of the project. This is also providing strategies of on the free implementation of the key components of the project in terms of governance. For example, how to consider gender and social inclusion, and you can see through this board the activities and expected outcomes, and it's the same for the engagement of the private sector, how to consider gender and social inclusion in the engagement of the private sector, what type of interventions. Also, related to behavior changes, how to consider the gender approach. Yesterday, Harsu shared the presentation on Grow Up stickers. and we have the different petals, and part of that was the menstrual hygiene, which is related to the gender dimension and the collaboration between the members of the household. Another very interesting tool to ameliorate the different interventions is the mapping of the actors. As you can see here, we have free mapping achieved by the project, the mapping of the mayors, the communes, the chief of Fonctan. So let's have a look at this cartography. Here we have the composition of the mayors, and that can help us on how to work with the mayors, and most of the mayors are men, and we adapted the transmitted messages to those mayors to consider all the different types of categories of people. The project used the gender marker, a tool used by CARE International to evaluate gender and social inclusion. In the middle and at the end of the project, this is used by all the staff of the project and the partners and the focal point, gender focal points, and the result of the auto-evaluation was included in the reports of the provided by the project. Here you can have the gender marker. So the gender marker is used by the different entities, and you can see through these notes where the project is halfway. The Ranwash was classified as responsive, and at the final evaluation it was classified transformative. Responsive means that the norms to autonomize some categories of population were adopted, and we transformed those norms through transformative approaches, as I mentioned, like the engagement, entrepreneurship of youth and women. And during the final evaluation, we identified that Ranwash became transformative and started to transform the norms, but we still had some recommendations to consider the quantitative data to readjust our interventions. Eventually, we considered the gender dimension, social inclusion, and since we have not exploited the disaggregated qualitative data, so this is an amelioration to be considered for the coming projects, to be integrated in all our intervention. On this slide, we have three approaches: transformative approaches, the engagement, the social action analysis, and women leaders. So these tools were used during the implementation of the projects, and particularly the tools presented here, the module on training modules on social analysis and action. So all these tools are available on the website, and the QR code can help you have access to those tools. This presentation would be shared on our website as well after the series of webinar this week. We're going to reorganize the files and the tools, and the tools that we mentioned here are all available based on men engagement. We have the modules on men engagement with the learners participants document, and we also have the trainers module, which will be available from next week to apply the engagement of men in all interventions. And related to women leader, we have a few documents that Ranwash used, some situational analysis and recommendation after a workshop achieved with women leader that you can use for other projects in the sector. Youth entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurship is a very important component to allow the youth and talented women to make their dreams come true. And Ranwash worked with Youth First for that sake. And here you can see the training curriculum that has been used, but also document sharing the result of those efforts. The training curriculum that was used to train the young operators in the field that we consider young operators. Women are part of those operators, youth and women exercising activities like local masons, seamstresses, or taking care of monoblocks in the communes of interventions of the project. You can also see in this curriculum the different modules that were treated and how to transfer them at the level of the participants. We also have the trainer's guide elaborated by Youth First, included in this curriculum. And here is the document provided to the participant to enable them develop their action plan during the training and during the coaching sessions. And so all of these tools are available for the WASH sector. To finish, Ranwash worked in collaboration with the different actors of the sector to improve the WASH, inclusive WASH infrastructures since the beginning of the project. That tool is shared with the members of the private sector providing services, so that the constructed infrastructures would be inclusive and not putting any categories aside. So here we have the public facilities and what are required for women and men, the toilets, the latrines inside the monoblocks, and at the level of the institution, the schools and the healthcare facilities. The showers, what is required, what are the common criteria, the laundry sites, and so you can have the different types of infrastructures with the criteria for them to be inclusive. We also have pictures showing the criteria to be considered when we speak of inclusion. For example, we have toilets and showers in Anduna Bay with rampants in the alley to go up, and we have rampants for people with disabilities. And lately, Ranwash participated to different events to share the lesson learned of the project. This first presentation was an invitation from LAMCO to share. The lesson learned of the project in terms of women leadership. We also had the presentation during the capitalization workshop in September, and the presentation performed by Ranwash during the ASCA conference in October 2023 in Accra, and all the presentation done by the project related to the gender promotion and inclusion are present here. Some others would be added in the websites. If you have questions or recommendations, feedback, are all welcome. We would like to ask you on how we can render more friendly for all the sharing of the tools on the website. You can send to us your suggestions on the chat box or raise hands to speak a little bit in the frame of this webinar, but you can also send the remarks, the questions, and the recommendations, suggestions to Claudia. We're going to write the mail address so that you can send those elements even after the webinar, to send your elements of suggestions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation, for your attention. We are open to your questions and remarks. Thank you. Are there tools that you'd like us to explore during this webinar, for example, so that you can maybe you'd like to explore more? For the moment, the presentation is not yet available to you, but it would be rendered available in the coming days. At the latest, next week, you have them on the website. And the documents are available already on the website. The links is on the chat box. Claudia, if you can share ranwash.org. Thank you, Radu. The record of the webinar would be available on the website even if you couldn't make it for the webinar. You'll have access to the recording of the presentation, and the presentation would be available as well. Is there a tool? I can go back to the tools if you want me to explore some of them for you. Any tools you'd like to revisit? example, the social analysis. We have the trainer's document, but also the learner's documents. For the learners, the content of the trainings. We are, for those transformative approaches, the local technicians who are going to facilitate the implementation of those transformative approaches, and the training documents are destined to the field agents. There is also another document for the trainers, saying for men engagements, the learners are the fields, the promoters, and another document for the trainers. We also have the gender mapping, showing the reality during the implementation of Ramwash project that can be used as well for the future projects who are willing to use gender mapping in the reviewing of the strategies and the points to be considered to be more inclusive in the interventions, and the gender marker. We're going to share the results of gender marker. This is available online, but we're going to make it available, the tool that can be used by the other coming projects. Which is the most important when you speak of transformative approach? I think the most I mentioned different transformative approaches like men engagement, women leaders, social analysis in action. These are approaches assisting and touching different categories of people in the field and triggering important impact. But I think an important point I can mention is the engagement of the partners to implement those transformative approach. That's to say, the implementation of gender focal points with the different ministries, the partners of the sector, and also the staff of the project. And that is helping the scaling up of the transformation, because when we speak of transformative, gender transformative, this is first to engage the different actors in the movement, in the gender transformative movement, and that is it, depending on the experience. We have the positive masculinities tools also, or the men engagement is an approach. As I mentioned, the training tools for trainers and for participants on men engagements. The documents for the learner is available, and the trainers tool will also be available tomorrow on the website. So if you want to discuss the positive masculinity is shocking people. This is a little bit strange, actually. It means that there's an engagement, and this is not something negative, but this is something positive, and this is the engagement of all to render women more independent. So fortunately, we have macho men here with us. So the objective is to engage everyone, if that is the theme, to facilitate the engagement, and we can say, we can speak of men engagements at that time. If you do not have any recommendations, thank you so much. For tomorrow, sustaining wash surfaces, so see you tomorrow for those two free other webinars. Good night, everybody.